for now. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Sunil.
Okay. Not on my headphones yet. Let me just figure out how that works. That's that. And this is. Am I loud enough using this means like just the headphone?
Sorry, I can't. You're cutting in and out.
Okay. Can you hear me when I speak like this okay, or is it not loud enough?
No, it sounds pretty darn good, actually.
Okay, well then I won't use the headphones then.
You're a little, I want to say staticky, if that makes sense. Like, could be your internet connection too.
I have high-speed internet, or the cable or fiber optic cable. So is it better still or no?
No, it's pretty darn good, actually. Okay. Maybe we just lost. Maybe it was just, I don't know what to tell you. It sounds pretty good. Right. How are you? Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Well, then it's probably as well as I can hear you. So that's good.
Now, I just wanted to see what my slides look like if I put them up on the screen to make sure you can see what I see. Do you see anything here or no?
I don't see anything yet.
Okay, so let me go back to share. Let me press share screen here and see how that works. Let's see here now. Oh, it says the host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, well, that would help. One moment, please. All right. I'm going to make you a co-host and then you'll be able to. Okay, try now.
All right, so let's see here now. And so do you see this?
Yes.
Okay, and then
you might want to, there, that's better. So now you're in viewing mode.
So I can't see my, I cannot see my speaker's notes on this. So I'll have to use a second computer to read my speaker notes while going through this. Does that work?
Absolutely. Just show the screen that, choose the screen that your presentation's posted on.
Okay. And I'll stop sharing then, and then you can go back. So that's all I need to do then. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Eddie.
Hello, Sunil. Nice to see you.
Nice backdrop.
Oh, I can do better.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. My name's Doug Sinclair. I'm coming to you from Halifax, sunny Halifax today. I really want to welcome you and to our second virtual CAPE Leadership Series. We're very excited about our program and excited about working with you. Just a couple of remarks. This is, we started a number of years ago. We heard from folks at CAPE that said, although there's lots of leadership courses out there, they really wanted something specific to emergency physicians. So we did a in-person session in Mexico, hard to believe, just before COVID descended. And we did, of course, a virtual series for 4 weeks back in April last year. And this is our second virtual session. And we've taken all the feedback from the first session. I know we have a few people have actually come back that were in the first session, all new content, and we're moving ahead. A couple of things that are important. One is this is going to be, although it's virtual, very interactive. So important that folks keep their cameras on. Will be, lots of time for questions and feedback. And over the 4 weeks, we'll really get to know each other really well over time. There's also going to be a little bit of homework. You're going to get an email after this session that's going to ask you. It's really about session number 3 on wellness and resilience, and you'll get a little bit of homework to do that'll help design that session. So keep an eye out for that as it comes along. So anyways, without further ado, I'm going to pass the lead over to Dr. Judy Morris, who's our host for today.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks everyone for who helped in planning these sessions. Thanks to the people at the Cape office and Carolyn, who's been helping with the planning as well. And thanks for you guys to be there, for being there and joining in the discussions on leadership. I'm just going to start with a land acknowledgement. I'm an ER doc in Sacré-Cœur Hospital, University of Montreal. So I'll go with the one from my university. So Université de Montréal is situated on a land where long before the arrival of the French, people of many indigenous nations came together and interacted. We wish to acknowledge these nations, their descendants, and the spirit of fraternity that presided over the signing of the 1701 of the Great Peace of Montreal, a treaty that fostered peaceful relationships between France, its indigenous allies, and the Haudenosaunee Federation. Spirit of fraternity that inspired this treaty serves as a model for our own university community. And with that, I'll share my screen and just go through a little bit of housekeeping. There you go. So this is the first of 4 sessions. We have 90 minutes today and every following Thursday afternoon to discuss leadership. Today is a little bit of an intro, why, how, and when. And we're lucky to have great faculty lined up from Canada and abroad with different backgrounds, practices, and expertise. So today we're really lucky to have Sunil, Sookram, and Melanie Stander speak to us. Here are presenter faculty disclosure for today. And this program has received no financial support and no potential conflicts of interest have been identified for today's talk. So here are our objectives, but really the goal of these sessions is to network, to learn from others, to get inspired, and to share challenges and also successes. And we very much want to hear from you. Some of you have quite some expertise in leadership roles, and we want to share a little bit. And that we've already had one virtual session last year, and we were able to learn a lot from each other. But before getting to our speakers, what we did last time, and because we're going to be together for the next 4 weeks, we want to kind of go around the room and see a little bit, just get who you are, where you work, or where you're from, and why made you sign up for this these series to be with us in the next 4 weeks. So please go ahead, maybe Quinton.
Hi, everyone, I'm Quinton. I'm an emergency physician in Saskatoon. Just finished my training last year. I signed up for this series because I'm currently doing the clinician educator diploma program, and there's a leadership module. And so I'm hoping to build my skill set and with the goal of taking on some leadership opportunities within the medical education realm in the coming years.
Great. Dan?
Yeah, I'm Dan Crompton. I work in White Rock, BC, at Peace Arch Hospital. I recently became the department head a few months ago, and looking to sort of expand my leadership skill set and focused specifically with the Emerge course, which I'm excited about.
Sorry, Paul.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Atkinson. I'm in St. John, New Brunswick. I'm the clinical academic lead for emergency medicine here at Horizon Health and also CGM editor. And this seemed like a fun course with great people, great speakers, and I thought I wouldn't want to miss out. So I'm here. Thank you.
Next, I've got Meeta Patel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Meeta Patel. I'm an emergency physician at North York General Hospital in Toronto, Ontario. I'm also the faculty development co-lead for the Division of Emergency Medicine at U of T and former co-chair of EM Update conference. The reason I'm here is I'd like to learn more about challenges for women in leadership and the leaky pipeline. I'd like to learn how to engage women more and help with promotion at the academic level.
That's great. Rua Reed.
Hi, my name is Rua. I'm an emergency physician, emerge lead in Squamish, British Columbia. And I'm also the medical director for a hospital here. And I'm here because I think leadership offers a unique opportunity to create positive change in our working environments for our colleagues and the people that we serve. And I'm very excited to be connecting with all of you across the country.
Thanks. And next I've got Michael Parsons.
Hello, I'm Mike Parsons. I'm an ER physician in St. John's, Newfoundland. I finished up my training in 2007, I think it was. Along the way, I've held a couple of leadership positions, but the one I'm in now is the academic chair for here in St. John's. I'm actually at the end of my first term, so if they don't boot me out, I'll carry on to a second. And I did the virtual leadership series earlier on this year. Thought it was good, so I came back. Lots of good information in it, and just want to get more information on leadership in general.
Great, yeah, thanks for coming back. Then I get Jason Emsley.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Emsley. I'm a pediatric and adult emergency physician in Halifax, one of the pediatric trauma team leaders. And I heard lots of good things about the last time this course was run. And I'm just really looking forward to bringing some of the skills from this into my role as the research director for our Department of Emergency Medicine at the IWK Children's Center.
Thank you. Then I get Melinda Truesdale.
Good morning, everyone. It's 6 a.m. in Australia, and I've had long-term ties with Canada. I'm an emergency physician. I've worked with Sunil in Edmonton, and indeed I did my sabbatical in Montreal at Sacré-Cœur. And so it was an opportunity to link up with my Canadian pals again at CAPE. I've been director of Royal Melbourne Emergency Department for many years, and also the service or division lead, and also work at Royal Women's. So 2 big centres in Melbourne, Australia. So welcome.
Wow, thanks for joining. Then I get Glenda.
Hi, I'm Glenda Caban. I'm an emerge doc here in Regina, Saskatchewan, and I'm one of the department leads for our emergency departments here. So have been in this role for a little while, but saw some of the presentation speakers, and there's always more and more I can learn. So I'm looking forward to this opportunity.
Thanks. I've got Zara.
Hi, I'm Zara Jeffer. I'm a rural family physician in Kenora at Lake of the Woods Hospital. And I am co-chief of our Emerge department with Dr. Emily Hildebrand. We just started this role earlier this year. And I guess it's a little bit unusual in that we're doing a job share, but it helps us to sort of balance our many different hats working in rural medicine. And what I'm sort of hoping to learn here is just sort of some approaches and skills to leadership in the Emerge department when dealing with lots of different personalities and people who, again, wear lots of different hats, especially in rural medicine. And I really like what Mira had mentioned earlier too, about kind of coming from that perspective as, you know, women kind of running the department. Lots of, I think, unique challenges we're facing there. So looking forward to learning from everybody and from their experiences.
Thanks. And our first session will be on EDI, and I think Dr. Stander will also talk a little bit about being a female leader today. Next, I have Dr. DeFrancesco.
Hi, Nicole DeFrancesco here. I work in Peterborough Regional Health Center, so I've been an Emerge doc there for 20 years, but I just signed on to be the Deputy Chief of Emerge right at the beginning of the pandemic. So it's been trial by fire right through the pandemic, and then our go live date for electronic medical records is December 3rd. So I'm really learning the leadership role with all the big challenges right up front, and I thought any help that you have to offer would be appreciated.
Next is Renel Nesbitt.
Hi, I practice emergency medicine in Regina, Saskatchewan. I am under Dr. Glenda Caban, who's also on this conference. So I've got great mentorship and leadership already, but I've been practicing about 12 years now. I find myself naturally falling into that kind of leadership role. And so just to build more skills into kind of what I can bring forward to the group. And I have a special interest in physician wellness. So I really hope to kind of build on that and take more things back and forward to the group.
Thank you. Michelle Westford.
Yes, hello. Yeah, I'm so glad, so wonderful to meet everybody, and what a wonderful group. I work at McMaster. I'm the division chair for emergency medicine there, and especially interested in today's topic as it's a keen interest of mine in terms of equity, diversity, inclusion, and glad to meet all of you and talk more about leadership.
Then I have Monica Sarmigiani.
I'm going to share my video. Sorry, it's not going to be fantastic. I'm post nights and I'm desperately trying to stay awake for this. My name is Monica Chermignani. I'm one of the emergency physicians in Montreal at the McGill University Health Center, and I work at 2 different hospital sites. I've been in a number of sort of quasi-formal, informal leadership roles over the last 17 to 20 years. But I recently have a new role as our new academic department's director of wellness. So I'm already director at our site, and now I'm sort of moving up the ladder, so to speak. So I'm looking forward to gaining insights from all of you about how to be a good leader, give me tips and tricks on how to delegate effectively so I'm not doing all the work. But anything I can pick up is definitely appreciated.
Thanks. Then I have Aisha Elia. If you have a chance to share with us. Or if you cannot speak or turn on your camera, you can write in the chat your background and why you joined with us. Then I have Alexis.
Hi there, I'm Alexis Lemix. I'm an emergency doctor in North Bay, Ontario. I'm the former medical director of the emergency department, and I just took on the role of Chief Medical Information Officer for our hospital. We currently are fully integrated in an EMR system, and Wave 2 will be implementing this EMR throughout the Northeast LHIN. So I'm just hoping to gain some expertise on how to navigate this change management process, especially with emergency departments.
Great, thanks. Lisa Harmon. Lisa is on the move. I don't know if you have a chance to let us know a little bit about your background. Perhaps a little later. If not, I have Stéphane Slan.
Hi, everybody. I'm a peds emerge doc at Stollery Children's in Edmonton. In my 3rd year of practice, I've done a couple things for our group, but just trying to explore and hear and learn about some more other leadership roles and leadership skills that I can apply at some point in my career.
Thanks. And I've got Tanya's iPhone.
Hi, everybody. I apologize that I am sitting in my car. I'm not driving because I didn't make it home in time from my leadership meeting. But I will introduce myself and then drive home as I listen to everyone else. So I apologize. I did get to sign in late, so I didn't get to hear everybody's profile, but I am excited to hear more about people as we move through this. I have been practicing emergency medicine in kind of regional rural Nova Scotia for about 16 years, and kind of continuing to accumulate some leadership roles a bit organically. So in the last I guess 3 or 4 years, I was, or I have continued to be our site lead for emergency medicine at our regional hospital. I also became our COVID site lead, and then have now accepted a zone site lead position for emergency medicine. So definitely looking at gleaning from the experience and tools of others and the content of this course in terms of helping me navigate my way through all of these things.
Well, thank you all. You'll see a lot of the other ones that haven't spoken yet are some of the faculty or speakers for next session. So, and you'll get a chance to get to know them in the upcoming sessions. So thanks also to you for signing up and sharing with us today. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to our first speaker, Dr. Sunil Sookram. He's a practicing EM physician at the University of Alberta Hospital and the Strathcona Community Hospital. He serves as a flight surgeon and dive medicine physician for the Canadian Armed Force. He's one of the main assessors and providers. He's currently chief of staff for the 2 Edmonton freestanding ERs. His leadership experience ranges from Edmonton EMS Medical Director, STARS Medical Director, and 30 years of service as a Canadian Armed Force member. He is dual certified with the CCFP and RCPSC, and recently completed an MBA at Queen's University. He serves on the Cape Board of Directors, and he's even thrown his hat into politics, running for a Senate seat in Alberta recently. So Dr. Sookram, pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much for such kind introduction. I'm going to share my screen, and then we can get started. I have about a half hour of just talking, and the slides are just a discussion point. They're not, they don't need to take notes or anything like that, okay? So allow me to do that. So there's that, and then this. Are you guys able to see all of that? Yeah, okay, good, excellent. So my name's Sunil Sookram, and this is the inaugural plenary session. And so it's my privilege to be called upon to do this. I mean, many years I sat on your side of the table, and I don't know why or how, but somebody asked me to do this, and I think it's a privilege. And so I hope to share with you what my leadership journey is, and from that you can take elements to help you complement your own leadership journey that you'll be going on over your career as well. Now, let me just move this. So, mine is not a conventional pathway. I sought out many leadership opportunities over a 20+ year career to date. And I personally don't think I'm any sort of leadership superstar. In fact, some of the people that are in among the learners here today have been my mentors. I mean, Melinda taught me when I was a first and second year resident when she was there. Michelle and I have collaborated on EMS issues for many years, and I look upon her progress, and there are others here that I work alongside, and I have learned from. So I think that's an important perspective with respect to leadership. That a humbleness and an opportunity to learn from those around you ongoing is important. I think I honestly just went out there and try to make the parts of the system I was involved in a little bit better. And I hope I've been able to accomplish that, and I hope I'm able to continue to do that over a period of time. I come from some very humble beginnings. I'm not from a privileged background. None of my family members were physicians. In fact, I'm a racialized Canadian. I moved here when I was 6, and that immigrant journey, that immigrant experience, is what I faced and traveled through for much of my early years. I had an opportunity to seek out and accept a number of opportunities, leadership opportunities, to gain experience, and honestly just to test myself in a way. And I found that the process of building and starting programs was much more enjoyable for my personality than maintaining it. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about that a little bit later, because I think it's important that we all learn to match our leadership opportunities with what our strengths are. Some background stuff that I've been able to build from a leadership perspective is I helped build a pre-hospital STEMI program for initially just Edmonton, but then spreading to northern and central Alberta, and very soon to be launched all across the province. During pre-COVID, remember H1N1? I was responsible for the flu response for Edmonton and got to build the pandemic response, immediate response plan for the public with respect to flu reception centers and things like that. And I think one of the biggest challenges I've had to date was helping to build a new hospital in Edmonton. I got to be able to build a medical team from scratch, build the processes, and run things for the last 6 years at Strathcona Community Hospital. And that has been a great pride for me, having been in on the ground floor and taken all the lessons I've learned over my career to help build something from scratch. And it's much easier to do it from scratch than to take a big machinery like the university hospital that I work at as well and try to move it even a couple of inches in one direction or another. So I've had a lot of diverse experiences, and that's led to some personal growth and a very interesting career to date. Through some introspection, I categorize myself as having strengths as a builder versus a maintainer. I've sought out chances to build, and then honestly, I enjoy moving on to other opportunities, which a lot of us don't do that often. We end up staying a little longer than we should, and so I wouldn't mind hearing a bit of discussion from you guys about that at some point. So when the change is done, when you're tired of the opportunity and all the innovation that you can contribute to something is ended, it's not wrong to move on. And so we'll talk about that hopefully. But you're probably more interested in how I got here, and so that you can build your own toolboxes for your own leadership toolbox. So I'll move on and take us to the next slide, which there's this ongoing debate about nature versus nurture with respect to your leadership. And honestly, I am not a natural leader. I had to nurture it. And as I said, my family immigrated to Scarborough in 1977. And back then, Toronto wasn't like as it is now, which is a multicultural center. The population, in my opinion, was not that diverse. I was one of the few ethnic kids in my school, and I faced, and I think some of you have in your careers too, quite open and systemic racism for most of my childhood, early adulthood, and that's not the norm now. I mean, things have evolved, thankfully. I certainly had no athletic aptitude. I was not captain of the basketball team. In fact, I was a prefect. I don't know if any of you guys were ever prefects. And I was on the cricket team in high school because like all the other racialized kids, that's where we migrated to. Like many of us, I was a geek. I was quiet, reserved, and I was a kid growing up in a predominantly white community in the suburbs of Toronto in the 70s and 80s. But in grade 12, and this is the days of grade 13 for you guys that are really young, I sort of had an epiphany. If I was going to be successful and be a somebody, I needed to change. And I needed to gain some confidence to be able to step up and be a somebody. And so I migrated to one of the few early opportunities in leadership, and that is the prom committee. I took the traditional Indian role of being the accountant for the treasurer for the project. And that was my first foray into leadership. And from that, I recognized that I can learn the skills to be a leader through some baby steps. And that I kept taking those baby steps over the subsequent 10 years. Very early, I realized I needed to develop some skills to be a leader and to be a somebody and to be a good citizen. And so I joined the Canadian Forces at age 17. And I started off as a medic, but migrated very quickly to a healthcare administrator, a platoon commander as I went to university, a company commander, a true middle manager. I also, when I was in university, did student politics and learned governance skills and challenges of politics and some of the backstabbing that occurs in leadership roles as you move upwards. I mean, that's a reality. I went on to leadership in residency roles and in medicine. While there is an element of narcissism, we are far more collaborative. And I learned how to work with a group of high performers, because as physicians, we are high performers. We learned how to succeed through hard work and being able to execute, right? But I think one of the biggest issues I learned during residency and in my leadership roles as chief resident and other things was learning how to manage the physician personality. I think one of my background areas is aviation medicine. And so I've learned the pilot personality. There's certain elements within pilots that are just intrinsic to them. Well, I think if you take a look upon us as physicians, there are some certain personality traits that many of us have. And it's not universal, obviously, but many of us have some element of narcissism. We're a little bit confident, we're strong personalities, we're goal-driven. And it's not a bad thing, it's just what got us here. And that's something you just have to figure out how to work with as you're in your leadership role. Now, I migrated to a leadership, EMS leadership role. And like Michelle and some others that are involved in EMS, it's sort of an unconventional leadership role from an emergency medicine standpoint. But through this opportunity, I got to understand the unionized environment. I learned how to understand due process and how to manage the discipline process in a better way. So the same things apply to quality assurance. I learned how to manage a just and trusting culture. And I learned how to understand organizations and be able to appreciate the intrinsic issues with an organization and be able to move it in the direction I needed to be successful as a leader. One of the things I did learn, and this is a picture of my first thoracotomy, the patient when I went to California. So we called him chairman of the board because he had a board stuck in his chest because he was trying to drive through some backyards and a board punctured him in the chest as he was evading the police. But something I really learned and still value in all of my leadership roles I've had is that you need to maintain credibility. Clinical credibility is even more important as a physician leader, because if you're going to lead your peers, they need to be able to respect you, and the only and that's the part of the work they see day in, day out. So you need to be a solid clinician. You need to have their respect with respect to your quality of work, as you, with respect to your volume of production and how you move the department, how you teach, and how you manage the department day to day. And I think that's an important feature we can all work on to be a good leader. Leadership credibility comes as well, right? And some of the important parts that our constituents see with respect to leadership are how we manage meetings. So having an opportunity to learn how to manage staff meetings and group meetings will build credibility. Mentoring and coaching your team members and being a role model, I think, is important. I think advocating for your team members when dealing with your higher ups, the complaints process, for example, there's nothing wrong with standing up for your people and maybe stopping the complaint getting down to them if it's truly ludicrous, right? And then being able to innovate, taking the ideas that come into your head. My big idea time is in the shower. That's where I figure out what I need to do to fix problems that are out there. I'm sure you all have places you figure out how to innovate, but some of your peers and your colleagues come up with innovative ideas. And if you can bring them to bear and making our lives better, that gives you a lot of credibility. I like building processes. And so that's given me some credibility among my peers. And CQI projects are ways we build processes. So continuous quality improvement strategies. And how you manage the quality assurance process and as just a trusting away is how you gain credibility. I'll just pause a little bit here and give you an opportunity to comment if anybody has anything to add.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's interesting you mentioned that you don't have a conventional leadership path, you know, but I'd be curious to discuss maybe after your talk, how many of us have had traditional leadership path? I think the path to leadership can be, you know, different from everyone here or every leader we know, because it doesn't seem to be like a straight line, and a lot of times it seems like it just falls upon us. So it's interesting that you had that comment.
No, I would agree with you. I think the opportunities exist far out there now than they were 20 years ago, where the only things you actually saw being on the consumer side, the constituent side, was your department head, right? And now there's so many other opportunities out there, which I'll talk about shortly. Yeah, thank you very much for that comment, Judy. So I came from a military background, and I learned my leadership skills from the military, but it's not the best way, honestly, right? So my military experience was my first opportunity to taste leadership. And as a 21-year-old, there's very few opportunities you can lead 30 people to get tasks done, right? But you're granted or appointed the leadership role based upon your Queen's Commission. And there's some really good leaders I've had from that pathway, but there's some really crappy ones as well, honestly. You can certainly earn the title of a good leader if your people trust you and you can inspire them to get the job done. But you are granted this leadership tacitly just because of who you are and the stripes you wear on your shoulder, right? And so what did I learn from the military? I learned how to effectively complete tasks, objectives, and missions to get the job done, right? I learned how to adapt, improvise, and overcome. I certainly learned some resiliency, because when you're at -30 and you got to get something done, you just get it done, right? You learn how to do it. I did learn, unfortunately, how to curse quite a bit, and so in my early career, I had to, in the medical world, I had to learn to hold my tongue and learn how to use more productive ways of getting my point across. The militaristic leadership style had a place. It worked early in my career because I was able to complete tasks and I was the go-to guy to get things done. But it honestly is not the pathway of a good leader in our world, right? In our world, I think, and I've evolved to this over time, I've learned how to be more versatile. I've learned to be more collaborative. And I think I value those skills that I've learned, honestly. The military taught me a way of doing things, but like the military has evolved over the 90s and 2000s and 2010s, they've had to evolve. And they have learned to be more collaborative and to teach those skills to their people so that they can learn how to succeed in today's modern leadership paradigm. I think what we're seeing in the media now with respect to some of the failures in the leadership of the military now are a reflection of what I learned back then, right? Back then, those people that are now leaders, the generals that are having all their problems now, were the students and were along my sort of pathway at that time. They're the same age group as me. They went to Royal Military College just when I was in Kingston in medical school. And what we're seeing now is a reflection of some leadership gaps that the system will have to fill and fix in the coming years. The military was and is evolving from an organization of misogyny, some racism, and it will need to evolve, just like I have evolved in respect to my own personality and how I think, and they'll move on. And we'll see how things go over the coming years, but I'm quite certain all that's going on now within that setting and will evolve just like I evolved. So leadership has changed, as I alluded to just now. It used to be about leading a team, command and control to accomplish the mission, things like running an emergency department, being the chief of staff of the hospital. That was the natural progression, right? That we once saw. But like what I've gone through, I think you as potential leaders and now leaders now, there are other non-conventional pathways for us to move from beyond the ER site lead, right? Physicians should and will migrate to their own areas of interest. And there are lots out there now that were not around before. And just listening to the introductions from our cohort here, you can see that people are migrating to areas like wellness, which is great. They're migrating to areas like ultrasound director. They're migrating to areas like medical education, residency program directors, and other opportunities within residency education and academics. Another area that I think is going to grow significantly over the coming 10 years, I think, are those of quality and informatics, which, as we're introducing electronic medical records, leadership in informatics will be imperative to have. And so those that are interested there, that's great. I started out my career in EMS, like Michelle and like some others that are on the thing here. I learned to lead, I learned to innovate, but through this opportunity, I migrated into areas like project leadership and then building a hospital team from scratch into a functional team. And I got to be part of something novel, this concept of freestanding emergency departments. I mean, our freestanding emergency department sees 120 patients a day, has an admission transfer rate of about 5%. And I've been able to recruit a team of people from around the country, around the world. I have a few people from America, a few people from the UK, and it's been an exciting opportunity to be at the ground level. And I hope you as leaders of the future and current get an opportunity like this to do things from scratch without the legacy of having a whole bunch of process already in place where that change management is that much harder. Starting from scratch was a wonderful opportunity for me. With respect to EMS, when I got into medical school, I was privileged to get into an emergency medicine residency program at the University of Alberta. I'd never been in Alberta before. I'm from Ontario, Toronto, went to my school in Ontario. But I had an opportunity to be around a program that had some really good mentors. All of them were involved in CAPE, Royal College, and CCFPEM. They were leaders in Canadian emergency medicine. People that you hear the awards that are being awarded out at CAPE. These were my mentors: Brian Hallroyd, Terry Sosnowski, Brian Rowe. These were true Canadian leaders that we are all trying to emulate still. And I've learned so much from these people. And so I think it's important that, like they groomed you, you also need to groom the next generation as well. During my residency, they gave me opportunities to take on leadership roles in EMS. I got to create the provincial protocols in the millennium in 2000. I got to pass the baton on and take over the 7th largest EMS system in the country, to take on medical direction of that right out of residency. And these great role models, they inspired us and told us over and over again that you can't be a lunchbox emerge doc. You owe it to the system to be more than that. And so as I took on these leadership roles, I think it's important that you think about the next generation and inspire them and prepare them to take on the baton from you. So Stefan, you're down the hall for me. I look forward to passing the baton to you at some point in the future, and doing the same thing. I hope you guys will do that in the near future as well. EMS was a great opportunity to learn the important aspects of medical leadership: how to manage HR, human resources, how to do process design, how to implement change management, how to coach paramedics and physicians, and the QA, CQI paradigm were all great opportunities. And I value that, and I hope you guys will value what you guys have as opportunities as well. Now, that's the real experience and the real growth. But I think there is opportunities for formal education. Now, you can learn on the job, reading leadership books, mentorship. They were valuable, but I did recognize as I became more introspective and learned about myself as a leader more, that I had some gaps, and I had to fill those gaps. And I did that through formal education. Now, I've learned from some of my leadership coaches, and AHS has some wonderful leadership coaches, that you only add through formal education 5 to 10% of skills above that of your innate or learned leadership skills. But I think honestly that I gain a lot more, and I would urge you, if you think you have some gaps, to consider educational opportunities. I not only had some gaps in my knowledge, I had some EQ or emotional quotient gaps. And for those that knew me 10, 15 years ago, Michelle and some of the others, they probably thought I was quite annoying the way I approached things and how I led things. And it was because of my EQ gaps, honestly. I lacked knowledge with respect to other important parts of leadership, such as strategic planning, organizational behavior, finance and accounting, and the business side, on top of my EQ challenges. And I tried to fill those gaps with things like the PLI, the Physician Leadership Program that the Jewel runs. I see that as a bit of a mini MBA, and it does wet your tongue with respect to how to execute and use your leadership skills. But what that did, honestly, for me, is it created more gaps. So I sought out opportunities to fill those gaps, and I couldn't do it through opportunities like this or being mentored. And and this worked for me, and I don't know if it might work for you. Something to consider is I sought out an MBA. I went and did the Queen's National Program, and I honestly thought that was a great experience. It was mostly mature students who juggled school, family life, and work, exactly the same place where I was. I only finished this 3 years ago. I started 3 years ago. I finished 2 years ago. And so I'm 50 now. I was older, and I had lots going on in my life. I have an 11-year-old, 10-year-old, and a 7-year-old now. So they somewhat got some of their time taken away from me. But it gave me some great opportunities to escape life and come together with these fun-filled residencies and do some real resilience and group think activities. It surrounded myself with other like-minded people who wanted to be successful but came from different walks of life. So they weren't doctors; they were businessmen, business leaders, business women. They were entrepreneurs. I had 3 Olympians who were looking to brand themselves, and so being around these exceptional Canadians was very inspiring to me, honestly. Middle managers that were looking to become executives. I think I had the skills to be a middle manager through self-taught stuff, but the MBA gave me the skills to be ready for the next challenge, the next step up. And that's one of the things that inspired me to apply for the Senate and run Alberta with its deviant sort of political system. And our government decided to have an election that's non-binding and would give you potentially a slate to give the prime minister. Who knows how this all play out? I'll see how things go, but it's the experience of the MBA that sort of inspired me to want something more and contribute more to Canada as a whole. And the Senate was where I think I was going to apply next. Who knows how it'll go? But the MBA gave me that confidence to think about that. Through the MBA, I learned how to be part of high-performing teams. I learned how to establish some important features that if you have a new project, we hear about mission, values, and norms at the start of any process. I thought it was bogus initially, that why do I need to write this or invest time in this, because we should just get the job done. I actually learned that making sure that we're all aligned as a team moving forwards with some foundational bricks in place allows us all to move forwards together. It allows your team to move together, allows you to function better. I think it's important to get to know your team and not just know them superficially, but really get to know them, because then you know how to inspire them better, how to motivate them to get the mission done, right? And so that was some of the skills that I learned in through this process. I think you need to understand the motivations and goals of your team members, because that allows you to inspire and motivate them to as optimally as possible. You need to know and understand the end users or your constituents, the people that you're trying to lead, because that allows you to meet their needs, and then they can get on the bus that much easier. I think you also, as a leader, need to be prepared to compromise. You need to recognize that you have an element of narcissism, especially with the physician leadership, physician personality. We all have it, and sometimes you have to give a little bit to be able to get the team to function and get you to the end state. And so some compromise is needed, and that's a marker, I think, of a good leader. I valued self-reflection. So I use now, and I didn't before, I thought it was hocus pocus at one point. I value my mentors. I value my coaches. I value processes to get feedback back to you as a leader, and I'd urge you to engage in those kind of processes. I only learned, despite my wife telling me many times I had EQ gaps, I only learned until I took that step of self-reflection. And I think that allows you to identify your failed or flawed personality traits. And I had some, I probably still have some, but I'm working on them. I learned about my non-functional habits of wanting to talk over people and try to command the room, and learn to be a better collaborator through self-reflection. I think if you're given opportunities to do things like 360 evaluations, you're given opportunities to reach out to the people on your team you trust, to listen and hear what they have to say about what you're doing and how you're doing it, whether it's right or wrong, that is valuable. And through that, you develop functional personal growth and development. Unfortunately, I took $105,000 tuition to learn how to do that. Whether that was right or wrong, I think it was valuable for me. It was a nice tax write-off. It allowed me to learn how to be self-reflective, and that's what was valuable to me. You need to find out what you need to do to get to this self-reflective state. And I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say after we're done with respect to that. Nearing the end now, I think you need to recognize that organizations and you as a leader need to match up with respect to right time and right place. Organizations will continue to grow and evolve. You will continue to grow and evolve. The organization goals and issues have to match your values and skills. And so there's nothing wrong, and I know that's really hard to, I'm at the stage too, where I need to realize that some of the things I'm doing aren't matching up with the organization, and it's okay to move on then, because that allows you to be motivated and allows you to be a better person. I think it's important to remain grounded as a leader. We all have, in our leadership roles, growing ego, and I think that you need to be able to check and balance that. And so grounding for me has been doing more family stuff and going out and doing stuff. So this is us in Morocco, sitting in the Sahara Desert, doing stuff and getting away from work and doing stuff, because this is what's important. When you're on your deathbed, no one remembers the extra shift you took on or the extra project. In fact, whatever your legacy is with respect to what you've accomplished, someone will take it on and accept it as their own later on when you're gone. Whether you're gone from death, whether you're gone from retirement, whether you're gone because you got pissed off and moved on, right? Someone else will take over. And so power, leadership can corrupt. You need to recognize that. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's one of those things we learned throughout all of school. Recognize that and be prepared to step away and return to the grounding when necessary. And so I do that by going off and spending time with my family. I have watched many of your pictures on Facebook over time of you guys doing similar things. And I value that. Life is a marathon, leadership is a marathon, not a sprint. Be prepared to engage in those kind of things. Lastly, some questions and comments. I throw it out to you guys actually. This is when I was in Edinburgh doing my MBA, we got to do our project in Edinburgh. This is Adam Smith, the great economist. I throw out to you guys, anyone know what Adam Smith's claim to fame was with respect to economics? Because if you know it, it's very relevant to what we do as a merge doc. So anybody want to comment? Okay. From the PLI, they said I have to wait 8 seconds before I can move on. So I think I'm close to 8. I'll give you guys some more. Anybody want to step up and know who Adam Smith is? All right. So Adam Smith.
There's some responses in the chat.
Oh, is there? Sorry, I'm on share screen. Can someone tell me?
Oh, there's free market. Is that it?
Market, exactly. The invisible hand, right? So the invisible hand moves the market in the direction it wants to go. And this resonates with me and should resonate with you with respect to emergency medicine, right? In emergency medicine, we have provided what the market wants. And so they migrate to us, right? We provide 24/7 service, high quality care, instantaneous service and answers, a one-stop shop. Rightfully or wrongfully, we are doing this, and the market migrates to us. I guess the question I throw out to the rest of the House of Medicine is, why have they not followed suit to meet the needs of the market? I have no idea. I look forward to your guys' comments. And then these are the other grounding that I have. These are my 3 kids. And anybody see the animals, all the animals? There are 6 animals present here. That's what we have to deal with in my household. How do I turn off stop share? There we go. All right. So that's all I have. I appreciate your attention. I thank you very much, and I look forward to any comments.
Thank you so much, Sunil. So many big messages for when you're in leadership, you know, reflective mindset and you know, having mentoring and coaching and considering training. So those are all really interesting pearls. Anyone has any questions for Sunil or comments? There were some interesting comments in the chat.
I'm looking through the MBA versus the MHA.
Yeah,
I think that's a good discussion. I looked at both, honestly, for me, and I'm not saying what I did is the right thing. I think everyone will find a program that gives you what you need. And I think that's the part that you need to get out of it. I found the MBA useful only because I wanted the coaching and I wanted the leadership and I wanted the gaps in finance and strategy. But an MHA may give you that too. So do your research, seek out what the program has and how it matches with where you are in your life at the time. And I agree, it's a huge financial investment, but I feel like that I feel more rounded, better, and a better person than I was before it. And that's for me.
And if I may add, maybe before jumping in, talk to the people who have done similar courses or people who've had a similar experience than you. Sometimes they can advise you on what's the best course for you to take.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
Yeah, some of the comments of people who've done those kinds of training say it was a great personal and professional experience.
No, that's great, yeah.
There's also a comment about the 360 evaluation, how powerful it is. My bias is that we don't use it enough.
I would tend to agree with you there. I think it's a good tool. It's very resource and time intensive, but it gives you some meaningful substantive feedback versus if you don't want to, if as someone reviewing somebody else, if you're not forced to go through that exercise, you give what's least, that will cause you the least resistance and have the least amount of pain to you. And so you'll seek the easy feedback just to get out of it. But a 360 allows you to reflect upon the person all around.
I don't see other questions right now, and we'll have time to come back and discuss. So I think we'll move ahead and have our next speaker talk a little bit about leadership. And it's with great pleasure that we're having her speak to us today, Dr. Melanie Stander. She's an emergency medicine physician based in Cape Town, South Africa. She currently works as the emergency medicine manager for Mediclinic Southern Africa, which is one of the largest private hospital groups in South Africa. Her role involves providing strategic direction, oversight, and clinical performance support to 49 emergency centers in South Africa and in Namibia. She's past president of the Emergency Medicine Society of South Africa and the immediate past vice president of IFEM and the founder of the IFEM Gender Specific Issues Special Interest Group. Dr. Stander, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Judy, for that introduction. I really appreciate it. So thank you very much, everyone. It's fantastic to be able to join you. It's a Thursday evening here in Cape Town, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion. So obviously, I'm going to be bringing a little bit about my personal flavor from Africa and international emergency medicine. I have no disclosures. Just move on to the next screen if my cursor wants to work. No conflicts of interest, and just to read or frame the two objectives really for this session is to determine why leadership in emergency medicine is important, why you should consider leadership roles, and I think Sunil certainly has spoken about some of those aspects in his discussion, and then really I want to focus on that international perspective and why it's so important in leadership. So this is my hometown. This is Cape Town, South Africa. We're right at the tip of Africa, and you can see in the foreground there on the left-hand side is a large stadium. That was the FIFA 2010 stadium that was built in Cape Town. And as Judy introduced me, so I'm actually in a non-clinical role. I moved into the corporate world of private healthcare about 5 years ago, and really loving it. It's challenging, but I really do love the job that I do. And it was so interesting hearing from Sunil's leadership perspective and some of the comments. I think a lot of what I'm going to share really reflects that same sort of journey, because I don't think we necessarily think, well, I'm going to go to med school and I'm going to be a leader. We go to med school and we become a doctor, or we specialize, and really how that sort of journey organically grows. So I thought, because of the international flavor, I'm just going to try something this evening. We'll see how it works. So South Africa, we have 11 official languages, and English is one of them. But I would like to teach you guys a little bit of isiXhosa this evening, which is one of our other traditional languages. So I'm just going to show you in the next screen. I am going to greet you and say Molweni, and you are all going to reply to me Molo. Okay, so I'll say Molweni, you say Molo. Molweni means hello to a group of people. Molo means hello to one person. So in order for this to work, it's easy, guys. It's just Molo you've got to remember. Is everyone ready? Okay, you've got to unmute, otherwise I'm not going to hear you. Okay, I'm going to say Molweni, and you're going to say?
Molo. Molo.
Awesome, fantastic, guys. So you can practice that when you're next in Cape Town, because it's a greeting we use very often. I'm just going to go back to where I was. Okay. I also thought it was probably pertinent just to spend a little bit of time reflecting on what's happened in South Africa in the last 2 years. I know we've been inundated as countries just responding from a national level to what's happening with COVID in our own countries, but I'll show you just a couple of slides for interest from a South African perspective. So you can really see we've had 3 distinct waves. We've just come out of a really prolonged third wave, which was quite hectic. Our first case of COVID was diagnosed in the country on about the 3rd of March last year, 2020. And then on the 27th of March, the country or the government plunged us into one of the strictest lockdowns that I think any international country has experienced subsequently. We went straight into level 5 lockdown. And the main purpose for that was really to try and gain capacity within our healthcare system. So our lives changed completely. You had to basically stay at home unless you were an essential worker. An essential worker would be, for example, healthcare workers working in hospitals, goods and services related to sort of petrol that people could get around, transport for workers to get around. Schools were closed. Recreation, restaurants closed, you name it, bars, clubs closed, beaches were closed. You couldn't literally step outside your house. You couldn't go outside onto the pavement or anything like that. You had to stay completely in your house, and you had to have special permits to move around. So that was a 4-week level 5 lockdown. And it did, the other important thing that happened is that we had a complete restriction on alcohol sales. You were not allowed to buy alcohol anywhere in the country. And there were obviously some subsequent methods that people used to try and gain a hold of alcohol, because we had absolutely no warning that this is what was going to happen. So that was a 4-week lockdown. There was significant financial impact, socioeconomic impact on our country, and we haven't subsequently gone back to that level of lockdown. We are currently now in level 1 lockdown because our cases are under 200 a day. And we basically fluctuate to a level 2, level 3, level 4, adjusted 3, adjusted 2. Our government basically has big family meetings with us virtually and informs the population, depending on what's happening with COVID, what level we're going into. But we have been in lockdown ever since the end of March last year. This is just a cumulative cases by age and sex in South Africa. So it's, I think, pretty reflective of what's been happening across the world. It's not mortality, it's just cases with an age breakdown. And then this is some vaccination information. So we've got a national vaccination database that gets updated every day. And you can see we've got a nice trajectory on the left as to how many vaccines we've been administering to the patients and citizens of the country. And then we just got a breakdown by province on the right-hand side. And then I was explaining to the panel previously that we got our healthcare workers were the first population group to be vaccinated. We have 500,000 healthcare workers in South Africa, and they all got the J&J dose, 1 dose. And then what subsequently happened is that we opened up for the general population, first the 60-year-old and above, and then 45-year-old and above, and then it became more lax. And 2 weeks ago, we opened to the 12-year-olds and above. And most of the citizens of the country are actually getting Pfizer, although in some rural areas we have stayed with the J&J vaccine because it's a once-off dose and the Pfizer is a double dose. Those are the only 2 vaccines we have available in the country, and the government just announced this week that our healthcare workers are going to get their first booster. So that's probably about, we started in February with healthcare workers, so it's a couple of months ago, 8-9 months ago. They're going to be eligible for a second J&J booster next week. There's a lot of sort of toing and froing from a healthcare perspective. I think a lot of people wanted Pfizer as a booster, but the government has dictated if you got J&J at the beginning, your booster is going to be J&J. This is just a breakdown again by age categories. So we've had a good uptake with the elderly population, and as each subsequent patient population as it was released for them to be eligible for a vaccination, we've obviously seen an uptick in the numbers. But where we're really sitting now, so this graph on the right-hand side is we've had some, you can see those spikes in that graph is when a specific age group has been open for vaccination, and you can see what's happening in now November, it's just completely dropped. So we've got to the point of all the people within a specific age category that want to get vaccinated have now been vaccinated. And then we sit now with a group that are quite undecided or people who are vehemently opposed to vaccination. And that's our challenge now, is we're nowhere near the 70% vaccination of the patient population that we wanted to be towards the end of the year to stop the 4th wave. So we're probably at about 30% of the population. So the predictions currently now is that the 4th wave is probably going to start in mid-end December, beginning of January. And we have no idea sort of what impact or what trajectory that will take. So then I just want to ask you, again, I just want to, if you don't mind, I want to stop share. The question I've asked in the screen is, think back to when you were younger, all of us had an idea of what career we wanted to follow. So, you know, maybe when you were like 8 or 10 years old, whatever, can you just show me by a show of hands, how many of you actually followed into that career? You can give a virtual hand. Oh, Melinda, that's awesome. Lisa, fantastic. Okay, Tanya, that's great, guys. Wow. I mean, I've asked this question before on platforms and I usually get no response. So that's fantastic to know that at that early age, you knew what you wanted to do. And I think it's an interesting reflection, because specifically for me, I had a very clear idea at the age of 12 that I wanted to go into medicine. And the reason why was because I fell in love. Not with this guy. I don't know if anyone knows who he is. He's Professor Chris Barnard. He performed the first open heart surgery in Cape Town, South Africa, 1969. I fell in love with cardiothoracic surgery at the age of 12. It's all I wanted to do. The only reason I went to med school was you had to do that first before you could do cardiothoracic surgery. Here's another photo of them during that actual op. So it was really interesting. I reached out when I was a med student to the only two females that were in the country at the time. I mean, this was over 20 years ago. There was a thoracic surgeon in Johannesburg where I rotated as a student. And I said, Kathy, I really want to do cardiothoracic surgery. And she said to me, you either get married and have kids or you do cardiothoracic surgery. And I thought, well, okay, well, now I'll prove her wrong. Then 2 years later, as a final year med student, I was able to talk to Dr. Susan Vosloo, who's one of our most eminent cardiothoracic surgeons in South Africa. She's very focused on pediatric cardiac surgery, and I asked her the same thing. And she said something interesting to me. She said to me that ever since she qualified as a cardiothoracic surgeon, she feels that a male counterpart of hers, every day that they walk into the operating theater, they never have their competency questioned. But she feels that every single day that she walks into the operating theater, she always has to prove herself. She always has to prove that actually she has the credentials to be there. So that was really, really interesting for me. And I did a lot of self-reflection because for many years, you know, that's all I wanted to pursue. And then I had what I call my medical midlife crisis at the age of 26, because I suddenly realized that actually maybe cardiothoracic surgery is not for me, and it wasn't going to give me that work-life balance that I was looking for. I didn't have a lot of female surgical mentors, and all of the ones that I'd spoken to were not very, weren't very encouraging, to put it mildly. And eventually what happened is one day, after coming back from the UK, I was working in a GP practice and I saw a tiny little advert in the South African Medical Journal, and they were recruiting for residents for a new program in South Africa for emergency medicine. And I'd been exposed to A&E in the UK, so I knew what it was all about. And I applied and started as one of the first residents in emergency medicine in South Africa. It had just been newly promulgated as a specialty in the country. This was in about 2004. And it was an extremely interesting time because we were the guinea pigs. Many specialties, many medical colleagues didn't know what we did. First of all, why we wanted to do it, how we fit into the general healthcare system. So remember, previously in South Africa, I think a lot of the emergency departments were run by generalists, if you like, general practitioners with many years of experience, and it was tended to be a stepping stone. It was certainly not a destination, so no one could understand why we wanted to work in that area. So it was a lot of breaking down barriers, and I think, as also has been reflected by some of the comments and what Sunil mentioned, I think that's sort of where my initial engagement from a leadership perspective started, because we needed to make sure that we could, as a new speciality, we could advocate on behalf of our speciality. We could make sure that we had a sustainable career going forward in the country. And so I put my hand up for a lot of opportunities that came past at that time, simply because it was something I really wanted to do. I had a passion for, and I just found that I ended up getting involved in a lot of different places from a provincial perspective, from a lead clinician at one of our big hospitals in Cape Town, eventually as the Emergency Medicine Society of South Africa president, and then eventually moving on into IFM. And I'll talk a little bit about that specific journey. But it certainly wasn't a conscious decision that I made that this is the niche that I'm going to specifically follow. So it was a very sort of organic development, but I think you know, leadership when you're starting in a new speciality is crucial, because I think if we didn't have that strong core of leadership that we developed in that beginning, I think it wouldn't really have paid off in the long run necessarily for ourselves. So I mentioned my lens is obviously being a woman in medicine and emergency medicine in general. That's very much what I'm passionate about. I also obviously reflect on my previous experience when I started in medicine and really not having a lot of role models or people to look up to. So this is just interesting. This is some data from the States. It's a little bit old, but you can see there, you know, Just under 50% of US medical graduates were women, or residents and fellows in the US, or just under 50%, a third of physicians and surgeons, and then almost 40% of female physicians were women of color. And then if you look at the bottom, percentage of women in medical faculty positions, you can see as you start going up that academic ladder, how those percentages really start to decline. This is interesting. This is now how much money physicians make by gender. Again, looking at sort of 4-year gap, and there are obviously clear discrepancies between the genders with primary care and with certain specialities. If we have a look here, the women's pay gap in 2019, so the largest gaps were in those specialties at the top in blue, and the smallest gaps were the specialties below. But you can see there's quite a range from 23% all down to about 40%, quite a big sample number of 90,000 physicians. This is now interesting. Jobs where women make more than men. So we can see they're producers and directors, cleaners of vehicles and equipment. That's very interesting. Dishwashing, very intriguing, and some other interesting. But you can see that that gap is really not significant. It's just slightly edged more than their male counterparts. And if we have a look at the sort of global gender gap index, so the Scandinavian countries are really progressive from a regulatory perspective and from that specific environment rating to gender issues. And you can see the closer you score to 1, obviously the better your gap is, or the smaller the gap is. If we have a look at sub-Saharan Africa, where I'm based, South Africa is at position 19, and you can see a lot of countries in Southern Africa really not doing so well from that perspective. So there's a lot of room for improvement. If we look at the World Economic Forum, some data, this is over 10 years as to comparing male and female incomes, and you can see that that gap is sustained, and if anything becomes larger over that 10-year period. And here's some information for you. When are the regions likely to close the economic gender gap? So that's all the regions of the world. If you look at the bottom, the world average is predicted to be at 108 years' time. So that's significantly a long period of time, obviously. This is something that the Harvard Business Review, they basically did some research on big corporations in North America, and they looked at for women sort of the aspiration and confidence aspects and what happens in mid-career and in senior leaders. And you can have a look at the top of both graphs. I've got the new employees, and 43% of women have an aspiration to reach top management, and 27% have the confidence to reach that top management. And then if you have a look what happens with experienced employees, and what happens with the senior leaders, clearly their male counterparts, those feelings of aspiration and confidence are really, really high compared to them. And one of the specific, or two of the specific reasons that they extrapolated for it was, one of the things was that the question they asked was of both male and female employees, do you see yourself fitting into the typical stereotype of success within your company? And I think the key indicator for that is just look at senior boards, and are those individuals on a senior board really representative of either the country, the community, or, you know, do you have some resonance with who's on your senior board? And the other thing was supervisors being supportive of your career aspirations. So in the beginning, you can see quite similar, and then with experienced employees, you feel or you see that from a woman's perspective, they feel less likely to fit into that senior rung, I suppose. And then also they lack that mentorship and support. This is also an interesting study published in the Journal of Internal Medicine in 2019. So it basically analyzed about 90,000 medical student clerkship evaluations from core clinical rotations in 2 medical schools geographically separate in the US. And these evaluations form the basis of clerkship grades, and often the narrative language is quoted in the medical student's performance evaluation, the MSPE letters, and which is basically your recommendation letter, which often forms a basis for your residency application. And if you see what's mentioned, it really just specifically highlights this issue of unconscious bias, which I think is sometimes prevalent, very often prevalent. So if you just look at this graph, obviously the blue words are the words that were used to describe men that were rotating, and then the pink or red word to describe women, and you've got your honors students at the top of the graph and your past students at the bottom. If you have a look at some of that terminology for women, delightful, empathetic, warm, poised, caring, pleasant, welcome, and then you have a look at the wording for men, scientific, earnest, respectful, humble, relevant, great, all that sort of stuff. So this was an interesting eye-opener about, I suppose, the language that we're using within our framing of individuals in a professional capacity. We've also seen some very interesting research relating to gender and patient dynamics, and then some not so interesting research which has been removed, which wasn't very helpful. But I just hope that sort of gives you a perspective on that first question. I think it really relates to this aspect of, and now I'm probably showing my age, I've got the feeling we're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. So the issue is there are issues. And we as leaders, we have to paint the picture. We know what the current scenario is, and we know it's not great. And we know where we want to be. And we've sort of got to paint that picture, got to paint in the steps for people to see how to specifically get there. So I think that's crucial from a leadership perspective is, as I think one of you mentioned in the introduction, it's about, you know, making your work environment, your provincial environment, your national environment better than what it is currently, and how we get to that specific endpoint. Now, just to talk a little bit about the international flavor. So from International Federation for Emergency Medicine, I've been lucky to be involved for probably about 10 years now, and initially started just getting involved in some subgroups and stuff, moving onto the board and eventually into the executive. And we founded the Gender Specific Issues Special Interest Group in 2014. And we did a survey the following year. And okay, this is 2015 data, but it's really interesting how not much of this has necessarily changed. So we got 45 responses in total, and 26 of those responses completed all the questions we asked. And I'm just going to give you some snapshots of some of the questions. So we asked there for the past year, roughly what percentage of total national emergency medicine residents are female, and you can see that's quite a significant amount, going from about 20 to 70% is where most people are lying. Then you've got there roughly what percentage of total emergency medicine graduates in your country are female. Again, quite a significant amount across the board. Our next question was, nationally, in every instance, are male and female emergency physicians paid the same per equivalent hour? Now, this was interesting. This was a resounding yes. And I think it possibly speaks to different geographic locations of people might have been, but I don't necessarily feel that that might be a true reflection across the world completely. What percentage of national emergency medicine programs offer a female resident mentoring program? So there's interesting, there are a few that said they do, and then quite a few that's really not offered. What percentage of female emergency physicians hold the senior academic positions? Again, very much reflecting what we've seen in other data from other specialities. And then about a formal paid leave policy, does it exist in some of the healthcare institutions? So this is not maternity leave, this is just family leave in general. And you can see for a third, no, it's not there. Then we asked the maternity leave policy, and yes, that's in place practically everywhere. And then we spoke about or asked about part-time work as a specific option. That interestingly is pretty much there across the board. And then we asked about a National Women in Emergency Medicine Society or focus group. And there, that was an overwhelming no in the majority of the countries sampled. The source of the data was obviously a lot of personal anecdotal, generally accepted, or some society data. It wasn't very strongly scientific, but it did give us sort of a needle, if you like, a benchmark, and it certainly helped flavor a lot of the initiatives of our gender-based, gender-specific issues special interest group going forward. This is something that was subsequently developed. This is now from Imran Subhan, he took over me as the chair of our gender specific issues special interest group, a previous president of the Society for Emergency Medicine in India, and he's created this fantastic 9-point recommendation for a smart emergency department. And it's fantastic. It's all about the patient interactions, the staff interactions. It's about equal opportunities. You can see about equal leave policy. So they're very proactive within his department of having these as a fundamental basis of engagement. And the other interesting thing is that in India, he found that there were some women that were quite interested in specializing in emergency medicine, but it was interesting. There was quite a few families that weren't quite keen that their daughters followed necessarily that profession. So what he does is he organizes special evenings where the actual families, as well as the doctors, can come along. Mom and dad come along as well, and they have some great discussions, and they really talk about it as a career choice, and they allay the fears or the preconceptions of the family, that actually that doctor, female doctor, is able to pursue the career that she wanted to do. But it's not only just now emergency medicine. You can see this is certainly on the agenda of other international organizations. So we've got the Gender Equity Hub linked to the WHO. The American Medical Association recently in 2019 looked at gender equity. We've even got the Canadian Medical Association doing an extensive review. We've got Dr. Judy Silver from Massachusetts Gender with the Be Ethical movement. The World Medical Association statement on gender equality. This was now in Iceland in 2018. This is also the Australasian College of Surgeons wanting to basically actively focus on removing barriers to the participation of women and increasing their representation. We've got here the New Zealand and Australian College of Anaesthetists. They also building in gender equitable culture, if you like, within the faculty. This I really like. This is from the Australian government, and it's about the Workplace Gender Equity, Gender Equality Agency, and it gives you a gender strategy toolkit. So it's not medicine specific, but it really has some helpful tools about how you can, within a small organization like an emergency department or a larger national organization, the step-by-step process of how you mature along the process of bringing in a very focused gender strategy. And it's got some components of like a PDSA cycle for you to basically benchmark and improve consistently the whole time that you work up the ladder. Here is also just some American data. This is from AAEM. I think it was about 2015 data, I think it was, and just really exposing a lot of the issues that women do have in emergency medicine, where we say 28% cite a lack of role models as a significant challenge, or 25% find that the issue of balancing, work and home life is specifically an issue. Sorry, that was 63%, and 25% on really the sort of equal pay and opportunities that exist for women. So it's certainly there, but what I want to just mention, just by starting with that IFAN and describing that to you and just bringing in some of this international flavor, is that one thing that international involvement certainly can do is it helps to amplify your voice. It helps to amplify your issue, your concern, and you suddenly realize that there are many other people within the world that are struggling with exactly the same issues that you do. So it's almost taking you out the sort of microcosm environment into the macrocosm environment. And I think what's fantastic about that international exposure is just being able to speak to colleagues who have previously been in similar situations. They mentor you, they support you, and then you pass that on, because you will have other countries that are just starting in the process where you were a couple of years ago, and how they've actually formalized that. So it's really great to be part of that. This for me is a really, really special photo. This was taken at the International Conference on Emergency Medicine, so the IFAM conference that we hosted in Cape Town in 2016. It's a photo of our IFAM assembly meeting, and it's basically our IFAM executive with representatives of all the national member organizations and their chairs that were represented. And I just want to pause and mention it was so interesting. I think there were two pivotal events that happened that really shaped emergency medicine in South Africa. And one of the first things, so remember, we were promulgated as a specialty in 2003 and the first resident start 2004. So we spent probably the first well, almost 10 years, say the first 5 years, really trying to cement ourselves within the healthcare environment. And we were getting there and it was going quite well, but it probably wasn't going at the pace we wanted. And then what happened is that South Africa were chosen to host the FIFA 2010 World Cup. And that was an amazing springboard for South Africa, because FIFA had specific medical requirements that we had to adhere to as a national country, hosting all the teams and visitors from overseas. And we were able to build new emergency departments. We bought more equipment. We were able to upskill and do more training. And we certainly were able to benefit. And also we were able to give our speciality that exposure, that we are the experts from the disaster medicine mass casualty perspective. That was a great thing. And the second thing, I think, was bringing an international conference to our country. So our national emergency medicine conference was always about maybe 250 delegates. And, we're a small community, small country. And suddenly just having the spotlight of thousands of international delegates that came to our country, I think really helped for our emergency medicine personnel within South Africa to see, but actually they brought of a much bigger creative family, international family, if you like. So my initial involvement from the IFM perspective was I had a great mentor that wanted to get me involved, and I became involved. And it certainly, it wasn't something that I specifically planned. Okay, we're new specialty, we've got to get international exposure. I mean, we were just trying to get up and running in our own country. But I think it was really fortuitous that we just got that right international connections early on, and that certainly helped to kickstart us. So I was really reflecting for you guys in Canada who've had EM for many, many years, your involvement from an international perspective would not have been the same as mine. I was looking for mentors. I was looking for, the tried and tested ways of implementing things, and we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. We just wanted to learn from our international colleagues. And I think from your perspective, it's slightly different. You've got a very mature system. You've got leadership up and running. And I'm wondering if maybe it isn't the case for you guys. Well, maybe it's time just to break through that glass ceiling. The world is your oyster. There are so many opportunities. If it's education, research, training, EMS, you name it, it's all there. It's all waiting for you. So maybe I hope that might make you think a little bit about it, because we can become very stuck in our environment, our ED, our university, our province, our country. But I would just put it out there, consider just opening those international doors, because it certainly is a wealth of information and learnings. So colleagues, it's so interesting. This has come up previously. Apologies, I should have turned this around, because your leadership trajectory, you actually want it to be upwards, but apologies, the slide is going sideways. But you suspect that it's going to be, nice straight line. And a lot of the time it ends up looking like this, as I think a lot of you have learned. It's sort of just moves a little bit and curves, but you can see there is momentum. At least we do tend to going forward. So I just want to say, get involved. I think I'm speaking to the converted. If you guys are on a course like this, you obviously have a interest, a passion about being a leader, about selling the bigger picture, about helping those people to see the bigger picture and to help them get along that way. So I think we've got that involvement. And the other thing is, please don't ever underestimate what the voices of many on an international platform can do, because it certainly changes the way you think about things. It amplifies your messages, as I've meant before, and it really gives you a fantastic perspective on emergency medicine, healthcare, and those issues in general. I'd love to just end with one African quote. So we say, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And colleagues, your last isiXhosa word for the evening is imibuzo, which is, have you got any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this inspiring talk. Just to let people know, if some people have to disconnect at this time, the meeting is being recorded and will be accessible at a later time. So any thoughts, any comments, please, anyone feel free to share. I will share just first that thank you for the reminder of our role as leaders in promoting diversity, promoting and serving as a role model, whether we're residents or we're young staff or later in our career, we can always be a role model and for someone else in the EM path or at our university. And thank you for this reminder, because sometimes we forget and we might have an important role in someone's path to leadership.
I wonder if, can I ask a question if
Yes,
that's okay?
yes.
So thank you to both Sunil and Mel for those really inspiring talks. Melanie, you touched upon a comment. You said that previously emergency medicine wasn't a destination. Do you think it has become that now? And how can we as leaders ensure that it isn't a short-term destination for those who work in our departments with the increasing rates of burnout, fatigue, and all of the other psychological downers that seem to be so much in the news at the moment? And by the way, your talk certainly helped lift us all up a little bit, so thank you for that.
Thanks, Paul. And it's an interesting comment, because we've actually gone through quite a rapid cycle, if you like, of physician burnout in South Africa, because I probably need to frame what our emergency departments look like. It's not the Canadian system where you maybe have, 3 or 7 or 10 doctors on a shift. You are it. Basically, you've got that cognitive fatigue, you're running the department, you're seeing patients, you're getting involved. And we've actually found within our graduates that wow, late 30s, early 40s is when we're having people actually starting to ask that question. So I think what's been really crucial, and I didn't necessarily appreciate it at the time, but I think we need to understand that the avenues and the diversity relating to emergency medicine is what we need to implement from the sustainability perspective. If it's just going to be, I'm an ED doc that rocks up for a shift and I work nights the whole time till I'm 60, that's just not going to cut it anymore. So I think our challenge as a young specialty has been able to very try and quickly build in the layers of research, of EMS leadership structure, the disaster medicine stuff, of the leadership, of the international emergency medicine. So if we bring that variety, I think it certainly helps. And I think it's interesting, the challenge from your side in a mature system are like, wow, if we put South African docs in your system, they'd be smiling. They'd say, this is so much better than what I've got back home. But you guys are also struggling with it. And I don't know what the definitive answer necessarily might be, but I certainly feel Sunil touched on that issue about finding your niche with your personality, your passion, the gifts that you have. Where is it that you fit in? And we have to, I think the more opportunities we can be creating as leaders and the more vocal we are about making sure those opportunities are there can help in the long run. But I don't know, we've got to work on it.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts or perspectives? Dr. Truesdale, may I put you on the spot and ask for your perspective from down under and all that's been said and international involvement and everything?
Well, I think that one of the mantles I go by is that we are all standing on the shoulders of what our forebears actually did. For United States, they were the earlier ones with emergency medicine, but Canada and Australia sort of evolved roughly in the late 80s, early 90s to develop their programs. And my passion that I try and instill on my colleagues is that even if you can just only give a few hours a year to some committees or something like that for the college, for the emergency college, to try and put in and give a little bit of something, you're actually then building that pyramid to then make our specialty very solid. I think in spite of all of the negative aspects of COVID, it really has brought our specialty to the fore. we are looked upon as the leaders in what is the emergency department going to do. We're actually being listened to a lot more because they see that we are the ones who are actually having to meet the demand in the first front and having to meet the focus of where to try and lead this these issues that we've got with such overwhelming numbers. And we're also leading with ideas as to how to treat people in need and how to do the best for the most people that we possibly can. So I think I mean, Mel has seen me with CAPE, seen me with IFM. I think IFM is a great international body as well, because it actually tries to bring us together, but also, again, tries to build those stepping stones for other nations to see where we've actually come from with our nation, so that we can maybe just, even if it's just giving a toolkit for emergency departments on where to start or how to build up a quality program, it's hopefully giving some circumventing of having to go through every single step and reinventing every single thing each way. So I strongly believe in collaboration. I strongly believe in working together and trying to benefit people, and just doing a little bit so that next step, as we said, as Sunil also said, when you leave, someone else will take your place. So maybe if we leave and that place is a little bit further on than when you started, you've helped everyone and helped our specialty and ultimately helped our patients.
Thank you so much for these thoughts. Any other thoughts from our speakers, Sunil or?
I found your talk with Melanie very interesting and very insightful. We do get focused on our own little parts of the world, and we forget what's going on out there. And so it's nice to get grounded and hear perspectives from around the world as people have traveled the same journey, but in a different way. So both Melinda and Melanie, both, and Paul from your previous career too, I guess, all bring a different perspective, the rural, the urban, the international. And I think it's important for us to all think about these things as we move forward in personal growth.
Thank you. Any other comments? Questions? No? Thanks for there's been quite a lot of activity in the chat and post and sharing content, and I re-put the video kind of reflecting back on the COVID times that Eddie has posted that was made by his university, and I think we will stop here, being mindful of everyone's schedule, and leave you with that video perhaps to take a listen to. And thank you for our speakers, Dr. Stander, Dr. Sookram, for being there, and everyone involved in planning this session. Doug had to leave, but I'm so glad he invited you guys to speak to us today. It was a pleasure to hear from you, and it's very inspiring to learn a little bit from what you had to share.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, and see you next week.